you for joining us for this final part of this very inspiring program, Breaking Educational Barriers, organized by KICC in conjunction with Oxford University. What were your expectations?
Mixed expectations. I didn't think Oxford or Cambridge was a possibility, but I was quite inquisitive and wanted to just come and see.
And now you've been in, obviously you've had all the information. What are your thoughts?
I'm very impressed, and I've realised now there's actually access, and if we work hard, if the girls work hard, they're capable of getting in.
The program has been shattering misconceptions about gaining admission into some of the most prestigious universities here in the UK among students from ethnic minority backgrounds. Let's go back in and join the panel as they continue their discussion on everything you need to know about gaining admission into some of the universities, the top universities here in the UK.
What is the current ethnic minority representation in the student body?
Well, if you look at the student body as a whole, 30% of the students at Oxford are from ethnic minorities. Right, Kristen? Yeah.
30%, right. Okay, another question is, again to Oxford, what are the extracurricular activities that my child would have to get involved with that would enhance their chances of gaining admission?
Well, here is the disappointing news for the highly accomplished, in a sense. Our selection criteria at Oxford are purely academic, okay? Now, that is a little bit different from some other universities, so we won't give any marks for the other things that you do in themselves. They will provide evidence that you are highly motivated people who know how to use your time, that you've got a wide range of interests, that you know how to look after yourselves. So they're not things that count at the admission decision point. We do think they count in terms of how people live. So when you come and become a student, the university, its colleges all make provision for making music, playing sport, having debating societies, watching films, a whole range of social activities are there. We think we want to have rounded individuals, but they're not part of how we make our entrance decisions.
Another question for Oxford, I'm afraid. Which is better, the International Baccalaureate or A-levels?
That goes back to my question as to how do you learn that I put to you earlier. The IB and A-levels have different styles, and if your school only offers one, you're a bit stuck in that one. You make the best of what you've got. If you have the choice, are you a polymath? Do you like doing lots of different things? Or in which case the IB might give you that flexibility. Or do you want to focus on 1, 2, 3 subjects? That's down to you, how you learn and taking responsibility for your own education. When it comes to Oxford and Cambridge, we're taking students from countries all across the world. If you look at the UCAS form, they've got over 100 different kinds of qualification that count. So we are very, very used to sitting down and thinking through how each person's individual experience makes them appropriate for Oxford. So it will have absolutely no effect on the admissions process because we're all really well briefed in making that work. What it matters for is whether you're getting the education that you need to make yourself good enough to come to Oxford in the first place. I don't know if Catherine wants to add anything.
Thank you. A question for Pastor Matthew. How important is it for parents to have a vision that isn't just about paying rent, etc., but also paying for their children to go to Oxbridge?
It was much easier delivering my speech than answering the question. Well, I'll speak as a parent. I would say when it became apparent that our children were now moving into secondary school, it became obvious also to us that some of the secondary schools wouldn't prepare our sons for university education. So it meant that we needed to delay our own gratification. Like I've always taught, delayed gratification is a sign of maturity. Parents need to prioritize the future of their children when it comes to their own personal comforts. I know you've worked hard, but it's better to give your children a greater future so they wouldn't have to come back to you and tell you they are skint, they are broke, and that was one of my reasons for really denying ourselves and paying the price. Of course, we had two boys, and one was so set in a Catholic school, didn't want to leave the school, so we left him since he had formed friendships there, and he ended in the university also. The second one, by that time, we were able to afford a private secondary school, and so we sent him. Our children never worked during school, whether secondary or university. They asked for permission to. We insisted they couldn't because we felt that you needed to give all you can, and we would make the sacrifices for you so we wouldn't have to bail them out.
Question for Adeniki. The person would like to know that, having interviewed so many celebrities internationally, if you think that it might be better to go to an American university.
No, because we're talking about musicians and sports stars, and as much as I'm a fan of many of those people that I mentioned, as much as the next person, I think if we're talking about academics, I think that we've been talking about Oxford and Cambridge today, and they are two of the best universities in the world, you know, along with Harvard and Yale and those. So I think that, you know, those two are universities that are here that, you know, young people definitely need to take advantage of. I think they haven't been taken advantage of as much as they should have been. We've talked today about, you know, working hard and applying yourself and really pushing to get those top grades. So I think that, you know, Oxford and Cambridge, you know, going there is getting a world-class education, you know, that you can take to America or anywhere else in the world. So, no, I don't think that's the case, to be honest.
Thank you. And a question for Andrew. Was Oxford your first choice? And can you tell us a little bit about the selection and interview process? How daunting was it?
Sure. Yes, Oxford was my first choice. I also applied to Durham and Warwick and Exeter. I think they're on my UCAS list of choices. So Oxford was my first choice. In terms of a process, so I study history and English, as I mentioned earlier. I initially applied for English, so a single honours degree. So I had to do my personal statement, UCAS form, handed in early, I think around October, as you mentioned, and then I was invited up to interview, having taken a written English exam, unseen poem, wrote about it for about an hour or so, and then I went up to interview. I had 2 interviews because I applied directly to Merton College. You can also make an open application, which means that you just apply to the university as such, and you're allocated a college. But I liked Merton. Personally, I think it's better to pick a college. I think it shows a bit more conviction, but that's quite subjective. So I applied to Merton. I had 2 interviews, both with 2 tutors. There, I didn't have any occasions. You hear about rumours that the tutor will put the chair facing the wrong way, so you'll have to adjust it, and you'll have weird, wacky tests. That didn't happen. If anything, it was just a discussion. It was just an opportunity to talk about my subject and the areas which I found interesting. My first interview was daunting. I came out of it feeling like it had gone horribly wrong. And ironically, that was one I prepared for. And the second one went well, and it was just a discussion. I actually enjoyed it. I think a lot of people say that the interview process is two-way, in the sense that whilst you are being interviewed by tutors and people who want to teach you or are considering teaching you, it is also an opportunity for you to learn a lot more about Oxford and the kind of tutorial system. The interview system is very useful because, in essence, as an undergraduate, that's all I do, in the sense that every week I will go once or twice a week and just sit there for an hour or up to 2 hours with another person, sometimes just by myself, and talk to a tutor about my subject. So it's very much a continuation of that, and therefore provides quite useful insight into your degree.
Okay, thank you. Another question for Pastor Matthew. This is from a young person. My parents do not agree with my university choice of subject area. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I'm not quite sure what to do. What can you advise?
Well, let's first bring it out in the open. There is a drama within the black community. Black parents often think the only subjects to study are medicine, law, what else? Accountancy. However, we live in a changing world, and my first approach as a parent and as an advisor to many parents is that a degree is really a foundation for life. It does not necessarily suggest what you might do for the rest of your life. One of our pastors, Dr. Dipo Oluyomi, is a gynecologist and an obstetrician. I'm not sure if he has practiced. He hasn't practiced in like 20-something years. That was a foundation, but obviously it enhances whatever he now does. He's our pastor of counseling. He's able to bring into fore the education he has compared to maybe some of us who didn't have that background in dealing with people who have certain issues. So I think, first of all, parents need to adjust a little bit and realize that the world has really moved forward, and there are courses. And also, number two, parents need to know what's their point of actualization. What really do you want for your children? Is it financial gain or fulfillment? Is it being able to influence and make a contribution to society?
Adiniki, a question. As a journalist, can you tell us why the accolades and the achievements of a lot of the black people in your publications aren't highlighted in mainstream press?
It's a shame that they're not, and that's one of the reasons why, the main reason really why we put together the Power List and Future Leaders magazine, because these people who should be role models were not visible. You know, there was some reports, there's been ongoing reports over the last few years about young black kids and role models, and the fact that many of the role models for young black kids are, you know, in the entertainment industry or in the sporting industry. And also, unfortunately, a lot of times when you see black people in the media, you know, it can be quite negative, you know, to do with crime and things like that, which is unfortunate. The truth of the matter is, the negatives that we see, although, you know, they are important, and we need to, you know, realize that and, you know, definitely think about ways of changing those issues. That is the minority of the black community, and that's the misconception, because that's what a lot of people see all the time. You know, some people may feel like that's what the majority of black people are about. I don't know if it's because, I mean, as a journalist, that those sorts of stories are the ones that, you know, sell newspapers and are, you know, sensational, and, you know, those are the ones that attract attention. But that's probably one of the reasons why you don't see, you know, more of the positives. And that's one of the things that we definitely wanted to change, and to prove that, you know, it's not just negativity within the black community. In the Power List and Future Leaders, we have so many examples of black people in all industries who are doing well, who are exceeding and excelling.
I also think that there has been a paradigm shift within the black community in the past, should I say 20 years. Until the past 20 years, the average black family in the United Kingdom has a mind of, I'm here to study, I'm going home. Or I'm here to work, I'm going home. But in the past 20 years, there has been a paradigm shift. There has also been, I don't know if I would call it an immigration of the black person born in Britain, taken back home to Africa, but suddenly parents finding the challenges of Africa not conducive for the training of their children. So such kids coming back. And suddenly, most of those kids who were born here in the 50s, 60s, 70s, who went back to Africa, came back with degrees, came back as doctors, pharmacists, etc., etc., and suddenly society has a different kind of a black person. I think sociologists are pretending that there is no change, or they are choosing not to study this new phenomenon. And if you notice, even our schools have changed. In the past, the record was kids in school, black kids in schools don't do well. It's changing. There is a middle class black community who want the same kind of lifestyle for their children. So I think somebody somewhere needs to make the media, the sociologists, and so on and so forth to know there's a new kid on the block and you need to talk about him.
What were your expectations coming in today to this conference?
I would say the expectation was fulfilled because coming up, like she's only 13 years old and she's got big dreams, and she always mentions about big universities. So there's like a higher opener, obviously, to let us know how easily we can actually get there.
There has been this euphoria that it is the Oxford and Cambridge is predominantly for the so-called selected few. But today it's really told me that all you need is the talent and the inspiration to make a push for it.
What I want to do today is just talk you through some of the issues to do with financing, because I was asked a question back in there, how much does it cost to do a 3-year degree? And as a headline figure, for your fees and your living costs, it's about 50,000, which is a dreadful figure. But the way that is working in terms of both what the government's doing and what we at Oxford are trying to do means that at no point are you personally, as an individual or a parent, ever going to be asked to pay that money up front. The question is then, how do you make the decisions you need to make sure that all does work in the end, and then have the confidence to go for it? And that's what it boils down to. So, can you afford to apply to Oxford? Well, what is going on? What I'm going to do today is talk you through the specific stuff to Oxford, but also generally the points raised. Has anyone come across Money Saving Expert? The website, yeah? Martin Lewis talks the most sense on student finance I've seen anywhere. And if you have time to watch his whole half-hour presentation when you get home, that would be a really good backup to the things I'm going to say here. So I've taken what's relevant from his work, added in the Oxford-specific stuff. So the first thing is, okay, some universities are charging 6,000, some are charging 9,000, and a variety of things in between. If you're charging over 6,000, you have to have an agreement with the government about how you're going to use that extra money to improve access and support. So you can only charge over 6,000 if the government's agreed you're doing enough work or aiming to do enough work to support people. So that extra money is getting ploughed straight back in to supporting students. So what you pay comes back to you if you need it. Also, if you look at increasing the fees, in the end, you're paying back the same. When you take out your loan to pay for your fees, you're paying back the same every month. Whether you've done a £6,000 course or a £9,000 course, your monthly repayments afterwards are going to be identical. It's going to be a question of how long it takes you to pay it off, and indeed if you ever pay it all off. And I'll come back into more detail as we go, but the increase in tuition fee isn't going to increase the amount anyone pays back on a monthly basis afterwards. You don't need any of it up front. The £9,000 a year that you're going to be asked to pay for fees, if you're paying the whole lot, will entirely be given as a loan. A separate extra bit of loan will come in to cover maintenance. So the whole lot will be subsidised. At worst, it will all be a loan. At best, it will be a mixture of fee waivers, bursaries, and loan. None of it do you have to have in hand. In fact, what Oxford are doing is they're deliberately increasing the bursary available to first years so that the first years have some settling in money. So they're offering between £500 and £1,000 extra bursary for every first year so that you can go and join all the student societies, so you can buy that laptop, so you can do all those kind of things you need to settle in.
none of those extra costs are going to be upfront costs. The average Oxford leaving salary is about 23, 21 for universities across the country, 23 for Oxford. Then after 30 years, the government writes it off anyway, which is why it doesn't matter if you're doing a £6,000 or a £9,000 course, because I played around on one of the calculators recently, and if you have the maximum loan available, to pay off the whole loan in 30 years, you'd have to start, your first graduate salary would have to be £45,000 a year. That's not going to happen for 99% of people. So for 99% of people who take out the maximum loan, they will never pay it back. In terms of how does this affect you when you are paying it back, well, if you're earning £25,000 a year, which is just above average graduate starting salary, you're going to be paying back £30 a month. So that's a night out in a nice restaurant. That's a mobile phone contract. We're not talking a huge lifestyle change to accommodate those repayments. And one would hope by the time you were earning, that's wrong, I must have typed that in wrong, that must be 180. One would hope that by the time you're earning 40 grand a year, £142 a month is not unmanageable either. None of these are vast sums. And as I said earlier, they're slightly lower than today's sums. This is what Oxford's doing. If your household income, we've bracketed it slightly different, so we can offer even more support to the lower income brackets. If you're earning £16,000 or less, we will give you a bursary in your first year. We will give you I typed these all wrong, still £3,000 in your second year. We will discount your fees by £5,500 in your first year and discount them further in subsequent years. So at no point will you be paying full fees. So you'll take out a smaller loan to start with. And you'll be getting, if you're in this bracket, you're getting 4,300 from the university. If we think back to that previous slide, you're also getting £3 grand-ish from the government. That adds up to your £7,500 maintenance living costs without you ever having to take out the loan. So that's your maintenance covered. And you're only worrying about the fees, which are reduced as well. So your total costs, if you were on a household income of £16,000 or less, would be, quick maths, 13, 12, 14, 15, about just under 16,000. So not 50 at all, but just under 16. That decreases as you go up, but it's not until you get to £42,601 that you don't get any bursary assistance at all, which hopefully isn't unrealistic for you to think about, that if there is a household income of that, maybe you could be supporting your children. For most people who are going to fall in these kind of areas, there is enough support to get you off the ground and to hopefully make it feel a little bit less scary along the way. This is this year. We don't know exactly what's happening next year at the moment. So this is being changed on an annual basis in response to whatever the government does.
The next thing that you need to think about is how you choose your course. I think we've already highlighted the fact that though we cover a wide range of different topics, we don't cover everything. So, Oxford doesn't cover courses like pharmacy and drama and journalism. So there are a whole bunch of topics which you'd have to study at another university. We tend, and so does Cambridge, to offer reasonably traditional academic courses. There are some things which just Cambridge does and we don't do, and vice versa. So if you want to be a vet or an architect, you'd need to think about Cambridge. If you want to learn to speak Czech or do fine art, you should come to Oxford. So there are some differences in approach. Irrespective of the course that you do, you will find that point that I made about your recruitability and your employability will stand. So there's a really fascinating leaflet that I think theology as a subject produced in Oxford. And you might be tempted to think, well, if you've done theology, you're going to become a pastor or a chaplain or a priest. And some people do that, but people go into the civil service, they become businessmen and social entrepreneurs, they become bankers, they design computer programs, and they can show and tell you stories in that leaflet about a whole range of careers that were open to people who'd done something that might sound rather narrow, like theology. What Oxford thinks is the right way for it to teach its courses is to really sort of set a long climb over the 3 or 4 years of the degree. So you start quite broad with the principles of the subject, and then you might focus in on more specialist areas, really honing your skills in the different topics. So it's a different approach from some other universities where you might be doing a more modular kind of degree, where you gather points and the points build up to form your degree. We put quite a lot of weight on the assessment that comes at the end. And one of the nice things about that while you're doing the degree is that the primary focus isn't on assessment. Because we think actually if you're coming through the British school system today, you probably need a break from assessment. You know, you have been assessed at pretty much every point from age 7 onwards with your SAT. So our idea is that you should really focus in the degree on getting an education, and then the assessment kind of comes at the end. So that means there's quite a strong emphasis on examinations. And again, this comes back to choice and to knowing yourself. If that's not something that appeals to you, then maybe, you know, a different approach at a different university would suit you better. We do have some submissions along the way now, so people will write projects and theses, but nonetheless, you know, you're going to have to sit down in some 3-hour papers at the end and really show your mettle.
From a student's perspective, why do you think this conference and the message is so important?
It's important to kind of, you know, let people from black ethnic minorities know that, you know, Oxford's open to them as well.
It's opened my eyes that anybody can go to Oxford. It doesn't have to be a particular social class that can go there, but it's open for one and all.
But it's all about the children. So we are in the United Kingdom to stay. So whilst we're staying, our children has to do well. They have to be in Oxford, they have to be in Cambridge, they have to be in Merton, and it's important for us to know the right information at the right time and then pursue forward.
That was simply awesome. We hope that you have been motivated, challenged and inspired to take proactive action with regards to the education of your children. If you need any information about today's program, please contact KICC. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.